Be a rather strange live stream. Hope you can hear me. Just to repeat that, it's going to be a rather strange live stream because in the early hours of this morning, I heard that my mum's gravely ill. Now, those who very kindly have been followers of my channel for quite a long time probably know a little bit about my mum. She's actually 102, heading into her 103rd birthday. She's absolutely brilliant and has been going strong until recently, until last night actually. And we got the phone call. And so I'm feeling obviously very upset about that, but at the same time very grateful of the life she had, and that it looks like it's a stroke, that it came in the night and she's unconscious at the moment. So I'm not going to make this live stream very long, but I didn't want to do nothing at all, because partly because I can hear her voice now saying, oh, get on with it, don't stop because of me, which is how my mum is. And so I thought I'd just take a few questions, but I hope you don't mind if I stop pretty quickly. And it won't be the full-blooded live stream that hopefully you know and love. And I'll make up for that with something next week. I'm sure we can do something next week. But just for now, I feel like being a little bit quiet. But having said all of that, I'd love to still just show my respect, really, and answer a few questions that you good people have put in. And I'm just going to go and bring up my page now, the inevitable dramas with the page. Always the same with Windsor, isn't it? My tin plate railway. Let me just get this going now. Sorry. How do I do this? I think I have to diminutize this one. There you go. If that's the right word. Then I have to put that there. There we go. So now I'm going to go to... where are we? Sorry, just going to come. I'm a bit discombobulated, as you can probably gather. There we go. Magic. First question in the list is my tin plate radial railway. You've messaged before, tin plate. Great name. Dear Peter, blast from the past. Why did Jody Shea, what a question out of the blue, sign for the brand new Wolf team for 77 rather than pursue a drive at McLaren, Lotus, Ferrari? It worked out, but how did he know? Well, of course, it was a brand new team, yeah, but Walter Wolf had been around in 76 we'd basically bought Frank Williams's bankrupt operation. And they used in 76 the Harvey Postlethwaite 308C chassis, which wasn't very successful when James drove it and wasn't very good anyway. Michel Leclerc and others could not get it to work at all. Leclerc, E-R-E. But Jody and a lot of other people in racing obviously got to know Walter Wolf, who's a really nice guy, Austro-Canadian. What was he? He was a oil rig fire putter-outer, if that makes sense from memory. He basically had a monopoly of the entire industry, of that specific industry. Really nice guy. I saw him not so long ago in Montreal, actually. And very successful, very, sort of nice, let me rephrase that, a sort of Canadian, well, I can't even say Canadian version of Lawrence Stroll, because Lawrence Stroll is Canadian, but sort of similar thing, but a much more approachable person. And he got on well with everybody, and he was prepared to listen, and he asked lots of good questions and responded accordingly. And I think a lot of people like the idea of Walter being in Formula One, and he had the money to do something. Plus, Harvey Postlethwaite was not in any way lacking in talent, and I think Jody could see that, even though the 308C wasn't a great car. The chances were that the next car was going to be all right. And then in the background, I don't think Jody knew this, there was Patrick Head as well, of course, working for Harvey, and he designed the back end of the Wolf WR1. And I think Jody, for his part, liked the idea. Don't forget, it was Cosworth engines basically for everybody except Ferrari and, well, basically except Ferrari. BRM, no, not really. You didn't even count BRM in those days. So it was just Ferrari. And so if you weren't going to be in a Ferrari, and he wasn't because they'd already had their drivers, Niki Lauda, Carlos Reutemann, then from Jody's point of view, it was stay at Tyrrell, where I think he was a bit disheartened by the whole six-wheel Tyrrell thing. And he liked the idea of being the only driver in a team. All the effort on him, designed around him. And I think it was that more than anything else from memory that Jody liked being the center of attention. And of course he would have been. It was a one-car team. And So if you add all that together, Harvey, Patrick Head, Cosworth Engines, Peter Waugh left Lotus to manage it, and Peter had done a very good job managing Team Lotus for many years. Very small, compact team with good people. It was a bit of a no-brainer, really. I mean, he was never going to go to Lotus because that was all, Ronnie Peterson and well, it was Mario Andretti by then, and he just won he was going well, and he won the Japanese Grand Prix, and it was starting to really gather momentum around Mario. So it wasn't really a place there for Jody. So it was either stay at Tyrrell, really, or do this one-car thing with Walter Wolf. And out of the box, they won their first race, the Argentine Grand Prix 77. And the back end of that Wolf was basically Patrick Head's. And the first Williams that Patrick designed was 78, the FW06, basically had the same back end as the Wolf WR1. And it had really good traction, really good back end. So Jody did well, and he wasn't, he was very sharp, Jody, racing-wise, had a very good racing brain, and no real surprise that, he got it right, really. Good question, thanks, my Tim Play. Good way to start, take my mind off everything. So right, now we're going to get in the same drama as last week when I couldn't get this thing to work properly. Let's have a look. Already it's apparently not working. Let's have a look. Okay, now it's working. David B. Hi, Peter. Rookie race was a top idea, so what's happened? Well, it was a top idea. Thank you very much, FIA, for not giving me any credit, because this is something I've been pushing for actually for longer than 2 years. It was mooted by the FIA supposedly at the beginning of this year, but I've been pushing to have a second tier Formula One for all of the young drivers, talented young drivers that don't have an opportunity to race once they've graduated from Formula 2. And I've been pushing for this for many years, actually. And my concept is to have a completely separate championship, obviously owned by Liberty Stroke, whoever owns Formula One, but run independently with its own races, its own sponsors, its own TV deal, endorsed by the FIA, administered by the FIA, and get on with it. And using not this year's cars, but cars provided and, if you like, bought from the existing teams. They've got to be proper Formula One cars, but they obviously aren't going to be the current cars. Buy them and get on with it. And so the FIA stroke the team stroke Liberty have sort of taken a half-hearted, watered-down version of Peter Windsor's idea and thought, well, what we'll do is do a race at the end of the year for these young guys, and we'll put them in not this year's cars, but the teams will provide last year's cars that they use for some of their tests for them to do. And sure enough, of course, without a dedicated team and a completely separate platform on which to operate, the teams have now decided it's all too difficult, much too much work, and the engineers and everybody else is going to be too knackered, and they don't have enough spares anyway, and so they can't do it. That was obviously going to be the case, which is why I said from day one the only way to do this is to do it as a proper championship in its own right, with its own dedicated mechanics, teams, engine, and let the teams find their own money, a bit like Formula 2. And of course, the reason Bernie and Max never did that was because they were afraid it would detract from Formula 2. But now that they're Max obviously is gone and Bernie's no longer involved. In theory, there's no reason why this shouldn't happen. And you can understand that beyond Formula 2, there is a market for a B Division championship. And it plays another role as well, in my mind, the Peter Windsor version, which is that a lot of countries and circuits that can't yet afford to buy their way onto the Formula One calendar, but nonetheless have a reasonable amount of money and a lot of enthusiasm to be on the Formula One calendar, they're great countries to stage these B Division races. And a country like Colombia, a very good example, Argentina another, South Africa, all these different countries could be on this sort of second tier championship, and then after a while they get enough momentum they can raise even more money and get onto the proper championship. So there's absolutely no downside, and I'm convinced it would work, A, because of the number of drivers around, B, because of the number of countries that would be into doing this, and C, because the cars are sitting around basically doing nothing and the teams should be doing something with it. So I was not surprised at all that the rookie race, as they call it, was postponed, they've said. I mean, who knows when it will be held, because the way it was structured, to my mind, it was never going to happen anyway at the end of a massively difficult, logistically speaking, Formula One World Championship of the type we have right now, which is, as we go into it, it's 2 triple headers, for Pete's sake. So that was never going to happen. they've got to separate it from Formula One, and they've got to do it properly with its own deals and its own TV rights and its own calendar and its own circuits. Then it'll be a brilliant thing, and then we won't have all these brilliant young talented drivers out of work and doing nothing, or going off to do IndyCar or WEC or Formula E or whatever they do. So yeah, disappointing that they didn't adopt my policy in its entirety. They just took half of it, and no wonder it's failed as a result, is all I can say. CBG, hi Peter, do you think Grand Prix drivers could be good rifle shooters? They all have really good hand-eye coordination. Yeah, of course. And the classic example is Sir Jackie Stewart, who was an Olympic clay pigeon shot even while he was racing cars. Obviously, he gave that up when he really became successful with Ken Tyrrell in Formula 3. But up until that point, Jackie was balancing his rifle skills, shooting skills, with driving racing cars. And even today, you'll often hear him talking about the parallels between the two sports. You're absolutely right. Eyesight, hand-eye coordination. Jackie uses it to talk mainly about the importance of being very calm and devoid of emotion before you pull the trigger and before you accelerate away from the line in a Grand Prix car. And he draws a great parallel from that and says that the reason he won many races from the start is because of the approach he had to rifle shooting, and he used exactly the same approach. And I think he's right. And this is in contrast to many of the drivers and physios today who like to be wound up like a top before they get in the car with reflex tests and skipping and juggling and hyper movements. Whereas Jackie, and I saw him race many times, Jackie was absolutely the epitome of calm and tranquility when he got in the car. And it always worked for him. He didn't have any preconceived idea of what was going to happen in the first corner. His body, devoid of emotion, was then just perfectly positioned to react to whatever was going on around him, and it was all instinctive. And that's how he did it. And that came from rifle shooting. So good question. Thank you very much, CBG. Roni Harb. Hi, Peter. Why does the FIA change the regulations every 5 years, since at the end of each era, the cars become close and the competition at its best, like this year and next year? So why reshuffle the cars? Well, it's a very good question. And we have discussed this before on the channel, which is like, let's not have any more changes. Let's keep this current formula for the next 10 years. We've finally got the engines to be relatively reliable, and most teams seem to be able to afford the exorbitant cost of the engines. And it's going in the right direction in terms of close racing and reliability. Of course, there are always other people involved in these decision-making processes, and they're always talking about, in no particular order, we got to make the cars faster, we got to make the cars slower, we got to make the cars safer, we got to make the cars lighter, we got to make the cars heavier, we got to make the cars easier to pass, we got to make them more spectacular. Everybody throws in their 10p's worth. And the way Formula One's structured at the moment, there are so many committees and so many decision makers and so many power brokers, stakeholders I think they like to call them, STAK probably, that of course we end up making the wrong decision at the wrong time about the wrong thing. A good example being that the priority always seems to be to make cars much easier for overtaking. It was the result of some survey in which a question was asked of the populace: would you like there to be more overtaking in Formula One? Duh. Of course everyone was going to say yes. But what they didn't say in that question was all the downsides that might happen as a result of changing the regulations and making the cars supposedly easier to overtake. And yeah, if it was me, we wouldn't have stopped the V10s, let alone gone to V8s. And now here we are with the hybrids, and we're going to some completely new 50% electrification engine power unit regulation for 26, because Formula One must be seen to be heading in that direction. Well, a lot of people think Formula One can do a brilliant job for the environment in terms of engineering and technology and leading the automotive sphere, but at the same time remain a really impressive show, very loud, full of horsepower and adrenaline. But very few people tend to look beyond their own particular needs and goals, and everybody thinks around their own little sphere of operation, and that's why we end up with a lot of them, needless changes and rules that we don't need. And it's a shame. It's a great shame. We didn't need to go to the hybrid engines when we did. They were too expensive and too complicated and too unreliable as a result. and we just got to the point where we had almost perfect reliability with V8 engines, V10s as well, but V8s, which were costing about 10 to 12 million for an annual package. And then overnight, the cost of the engines was tripled because we went hybrid and we lost reliability. And here we are, still there today. Yeah, anyway, you're winding me up now. I suppose it's a good thing, not thinking about other matters. Aaron Lee, hi Peter. Hi Aaron. Next question. I'm sure it's from Aaron. Yeah, one of our regulars. Hi Aaron, nice to hear from you. Do all the top teams place the same relative priority between the Drivers and Constructors Championship as each other? Has this changed throughout the history of Formula One? It's a good question. Again, I mean, I'm one of the, am I old guard in that I tend to think the Drivers' Championship is much more important than the Constructors' Championship? And to justify that, I say that if, for example, McLaren end up winning the Constructors' Championship this year, but Max Verstappen is world champion, which is going to draw more headlines, and which stat are people going to remember more 5 years from now? I think the drivers. And so, yeah, I think it's a difficult one. I mean, 81, Williams, who won the Constructors' Championship in 81? You know, does anybody care? It was Williams, even though the world champion supposedly was Nelson Piquet in the Brabham. Things like that. That's not the first time that's happened either. The Drivers' Championship's been around a lot longer as well. Of course, that began in 1950, and the Constructors' Championship only began in 58. The first Constructors' Champions were Van Wall, drivers Sterling Moss, Tony Brooks, Stuart Lewis Evans. And this really proves my point, I think, because people today will still remember Sterling Moss. Most people will remember Sterling Moss as the greatest driver who never won a world championship. And yet he did win a world championship. He won the Constructors' Championship for Van Wall in 58. He was the main man. But nobody really remembers that. So there's your answer, I'm afraid. Obviously, these days, the Constructors' Championship is weighted heavily towards money and how much money the teams have in order to develop their car and do all the stuff, then go racing. But it also brings with it a penalty in terms of testing, wind tunnel testing and other stuff. So I would say it's still the drivers. A lot of people tend to bang on about the constructors, particularly the constructors, and they're the people that write all the press releases, of course. So yeah, but it's a good question. It's worth remembering that we do have these two championships and that sometimes there are different winners. Could well be this year, actually, couldn't there? Hi, Peter. This is from Jorge Menares Harris. Hi, Peter. I'm going to Interlagos Sector G, the opposite straight. My first Grand Prix. Wow. Any tips? Thank you from Chile. Love your content. Thank you very much. Just fresh from your round of the World Rally Championship. Where unbelievable fog. Did anybody watch that? Just amazing. Special stage 11. What was it called? Lota 2, I think it was called. That will just live in memory for a long time. It was up the mountain and down the mountain, and at the top of the mountain there was this unbelievable fog. And Terry Neuville won the stage by 5 seconds over Roman Pera and about 17, I think, over Hot Tanak. Maybe, 11, I think, over Hot Tanak, his teammate. Unbelievable piece of driving. And in fact, I'm going to be talking to Terry about that very soon. That'll be out very soon. Great interview, I think it'll be, because I'm also going to talk to Terry about the outrageously rude comments that Sebastian Ogier has been making about him, Terry Neuville. I mean, Max and Lewis are just blood brothers compared with what Ogier has been saying about Neuville for no reason, really. I mean, what is he on about? I do sympathise with a lot of the feeling in the rallying world and the Formula One world against the FIA at the moment, and Ogier he had a protest in Chile in which he refused to do interviews at the end of the stage. I'm not sure it was particularly effective because all he was doing was getting at the fans who wanted to hear what he had to say, but that was his protest. But much more important, I think, is the way he's been slagging off Neuville, who's leading the Drivers' Championship. Anyway, getting back to it, Chile, what was the question? Oh yeah, Brazil. Don't forget we got a Portuguese YouTube channel now as well, Portuguese language for Brazilians and also for Portuguese too. And you can find that within our fold here. The straight opposite. Yeah, well, a lot goes on in that straight, doesn't it? Because you get the exit from the pit lane and it's downhill and they're braking hard into that left-hander, which is quite late apex from memory. So there's usually a bit of overtaking, usually a lot of touching going on, front wheel to front wing end plate. It's one of those corners, a bit of a straight afterwards. Actually, when drivers are on their own, that's quite a good corner to be looking at who can turn in a little bit earlier than some others and shorten the corner there, extend the straight going in and get the car nicely rotated. It's a pretty good corner for that. So look out for that and enjoy, I would say. That's a good place to watch. I mean, a lot of people would choose other places, but that is actually a very good place to watch. You've got the exit from the center S's and then you've got that left-hander. And you got the exit from the pit lane, which is always a bit dramatic at Interlagos as well, because you can get a really quick exit there and all of a sudden they're going in 3 abreast into the thing. So enjoy. It should be good. And at some point, look to your right, because that is where the old Interlagos circuit went. They didn't turn into that tight left-hander. They kept going right down to the end of the perimeter there and into a very fast left-hander, which broke up badly. I think actually in 77 from memory. Or maybe in 77, I think it was. You can probably see the old tarmac there as well, and you can work out where the track went. It then came back inside itself and went through the amazing Curva del Sol, which is now just used as part of the car park in the infield there. Bit of a shame. Great corner, that Curva del Sol. Ronnie Peterson, Jean-Pierre Jarier, Tom Price spring to mind as 3 that really look good through the Curva del Sol, always with at least 25 degrees of opposite lock on the car for about, I don't know, couple of seconds at least, smoke pouring off the left rear. In the days when smoke could pour off the left rear Goodyear and it wouldn't damage the tyres. Tyre straights, says, hi Peter, seems at least a few of the drivers, namely Max, are at their limit with the ever-growing schedule of races and PR days, the year-round regimented lifestyle, as well as increased control, as part 2 here, over their language and interviews. How do you foresee the young rookies coping with this amount of time investment over their entire careers? And thanks for all the great shows, Jan. Thank you very much. Yeah, I see it as being too many races, too much control, too much of everything. As I've always said, big is not better. We got too many races. We have got too much control. There's too much money. There's too much everything in Formula One, in my opinion. And it would be a better sport if we sort of could let the water out for about 5 minutes and let the whole level come down a bit and get back to reality. I would say that this business of swearing is obviously very controversial, and I've always said I don't like swearing on my channel, for example, and I think that's appropriate because people have no idea what age group are listening to this, or indeed social sector are listening to this, and I think you've got to almost come down to the lowest common denominator and think of children. Hopefully there are some kids, young people watching it anyway. But in terms of drivers, as I said recently, I think I said it to Cameron when I did an interview with Cameron recently, a guy like Max has spent his entire career becoming a racing driver and becoming the driver that he is in Formula One. And he hasn't spent his entire career, or indeed much of his life, thinking about how to speak and what to say. And bear in mind, he speaks pretty fluent English. I mean, how many of us speak fluent Dutch, or indeed a fluent, well, obviously Peter Windsor on his language channels, Portuguese and Spanish, but putting that to one side, how many people actually can speak English as well as Max speaks English? How many people can speak French, German, Chinese, the English people? Very few, and you got to give him credit for that. He's multilingual and he's very intelligent, I think. But what I do feel very strongly about is that the army of so-called media PR people that work for the Formula One teams these days, whose job appears mainly to be to say no to everything, should actually all be fired if they're allowing their driver to swear at the wrong moment, because they've got nothing else to do apart from educate their drivers and get them to perform exactly as they want. If they want to have their own media empires, which they all have now, And something else I predicted years ago with Frank Williams. I remember saying to Frank, Williams should think about having its own sort of media thing, and we do our own, do our own TV channel. This was long before the internet, and we kind of do our own radio, and we do a few other things, and we put pictures out, and we run the whole thing. Frank said, "Oh, absolutely ridiculous. Never happen. Forget about it." So here we are. They all have their own media hubs, as predicted. But one thing they haven't done, it's a bit like the director of the film hasn't actually given the script to the drivers, to the actors. Well, they have given the script, and the script just says, don't say this, don't say that, don't talk about the sponsors. We're going to have 2 people with you all the time recording what you're going to say. Don't accept any interviews with anybody without our permission, all that stuff. Don't. What they haven't told them is how actually to manage this business of swearing. It's very simple. I mean, I could do it. If they want to pay me some money, I could educate each driver. It'd take me about 30 seconds to tell them what to do and what not to do. I don't know why they're finding it so difficult. You just say to Max, in a situation when it's live and there's nothing that can be done about it, like an FAA prize giving, don't swear. When it's a situation when it can be bleeped out, go for it. Simple. It's pretty simple, isn't it? Yet they obviously don't know. Max doesn't even know that, apparently. So to me, I blame all the PR and media people employed by the teams who do nothing about this, who've actually made the situation worse. And no wonder Max is at the end of his tether about it all, and Lewis probably. I mean, Lewis has got Ferrari to look forward to, so he'll be bit relaxed about it all. It's just be different. I'm not saying it'll be any better, but it'll be different when so he'll enjoy that. But everybody else is, for sure, all the drivers are so annoyed about the whole thing. And because the team sells so much of the drivers' times now to the sponsors that there's nothing left for the media anyway. So when the media come, the drivers are feeling completely, knackered. They don't want to talk really, and they're just, what comes out of their mouth comes out of their mouth. And it's up to the team people to do a better job. I don't blame the drivers. I blame, because they're racing drivers. They're not public speakers. I blame the team people who should be public speakers. They should be very good at grammar, and most of them are not. If you look at the press releases they write, and most of them, as I say, their job is just to do nothing but say nothing. Technical problem. Had a technical problem today. And that's if you really get the information. Half the time they don't even talk about the technical problem. Or the driver T-bones another. And he says, "Oh yeah, I had a slight problem, got a penalty, but don't worry about why." And so it goes on. Kevin Pryor is very nicely doing a super chat. Hello, Peter. Can you see Max winning of the last 6 races? I'll start again. Hello, Peter. Can you see Max winning one of the last 6 races, or can McLaren win them all? And why are Sauber taking so long to announce if Bottas is in for 25 or not? Are they? It hadn't even occurred to me. Probably because nobody worries about it, except Valtteri. I don't know. I can't answer that one, except that I don't think they know what they're doing there. I know some very good people who are leaving Audi and who are very dispirited by the whole thing. And, well, we won't go into that in detail, but there's a lot of issues there. And hopefully when Jonathan Wheatley gets there, it'll be a slightly better place. But, I don't think they know what they're doing, do they? I can see Max winning one of the last 6 races, for sure. For a start, if it's wet in any of the last 6 races, and it could be in Brazil, probably won't. Austin, does it rain in Austin? Yeah, I've known rain in Austin. It does rain in Austin. It don't rain in Indianapolis, but it rains in Austin. If it's dodgy conditions in Austin, he'll be in good shape. He won't be that slow in Austin. He'll be there or thereabouts, I think. Mexico, they might be struggling there. Brazil could be wet, could win there. Qatar, don't know. What's the other one? Vegas. Oh yeah, well, Vegas, no comment. Bahrain, no comment either, really. So yeah, I think he can win one. And anyway, he'll be there or thereabouts, ready to pounce if there's some sort of variable that comes into play, whether it's an unexpected safety car at the wrong moment for McLaren or somebody else. And I think a better question, actually, I'm not in any way decrying yours, Kevin, is whether Ferrari are going to win another race this year. I think that's a really interesting question. Because when they've won races, they've won them pretty well, haven't they? And yet, are we talking about Ferrari winning another race this year? Not many people are. Be interesting to know if they're going to. Sheriff of Sandovote. Hi, Peter. What do you think of Nigel's recent comments about Lewis potentially winning the 8th championship next year at Ferrari? Yeah, I think Nigel's absolutely right to say that. Why not? If the car is very good, I mean, he's only going to do that if it's a very good car. But if the car's very good, his main opposition is going to be Charles Leclerc, and he could he could, he could beat Leclerc. I think it'd be difficult for him to beat Leclerc. I think if it's a good car, it's more likely Charles will be world champion. But anything could happen, obviously. And Lewis would certainly win races. And if you're winning races, you can stack up enough P2s and P3s when the other guy maybe isn't scoring and win a championship. But all that is under the heading of if Ferrari have a very good car, which is a huge if. Oh, sorry, next year. Oh, sorry, I'm talking about next year. No, I think next year. I'm talking about 26 when, it's all... we don't know what anybody's going to do, and Ferrari have a chance of doing a very good car. Next year, more difficult, I think. Because Ferrari don't have the best car now, so they don't have a championship-winning car now, do they? And over the winter, are they going to produce a car that's better than a McLaren, better than a Red Bull, consistently over a year? Unlikely. And so, put it like this. If Nigel was in his prime right now, I probably would be saying, yeah, I think he could. Because Nigel's the sort of guy that could do anything, really. I'm not saying Lewis couldn't either, but Lewis is going to go there and he's going to have Charles to beat. And I don't know. I just think Nigel would do a better job of psyching out Charles, actually, to be honest, than Lewis. But yeah, anyway, I've gone round in circles with that because I misread it. I wasn't thinking about next year. I don't think Lewis can win the championship next year, no. Again, if Ferrari have magically got a good car, it won't be the best for every race. And then in that situation, Charles is even more likely to be the guy with more points, I think. So, kind of answered that one in a roundabout way. Sheriff of Sandovote again. What do you think of the Red Bull V-Carb driver situation? Personally, I think Isaac is 25. He seems to be the sort of driver who could work well with engineers to really dial in the car properly. Talking about Isaac Hadjar. Yeah, I think Red Bull are starting to panic a little bit about their massively successful young driver academy, which began effectively with Scott Speed. And we all know what happened there. And we've got, in the meantime, Antonelli, and we've got Franco Colapinto, and what's happened to the Red Bull guys? So they've immediately re-elected Liam Lawson into Formula One, and he's replacing Daniel Ricciardo, young guy. I think he's probably quicker than Daniel over a 3-race period. I'm not sure over one lap if he's quicker than Daniel right now. So it'd be interesting to see if he blows Yuki Tsunoda away or not. I've said before, he's very, very quick, Liam Lawson, when he's really got a bit of experience behind him and he is able to be Liam Lawson. I'm not decrying Daniel. I think Daniel's still reasonably good, but he is a oversteery Carlos Sainz-y sort of driver. So if they're expecting an Antonelli or even a Colapinto, I don't think they're going to be. I think they're going to be a bit surprised. But he is very, very good, Liam. But what I'm trying to say is if he just jumps in the car, I don't think overnight he's just going to do a better job than Daniel Ricciardo, he's had his moments this year, hasn't he? Well, the last one was Miami, I suppose, but he's a pretty good racer sometimes still. Anyway, what do we think about Hadjar? Yeah, he looks very good, doesn't he? Very difficult to say. There's a lot of good young drivers in Formula 2 now, very good. And not all of them are, flavour of the Formula 1 month at the moment. But Formula 1's very good at just sort of going on to the next big star. And you've got talent like, I don't know, Teo Pourchaire or Fred Vesti staring you in the face. And immediately everyone's looking at the next generation. Well, not even the next generation, it's the next sort of year. And just discarding the guys from last year or 2 years ago. And that's wrong. That's very wrong, I think. And yeah, I think Hadjar's good, no doubt about it. He seems to be right there. But then again, I don't know, somebody like Zane Maloney's very good as well, I suspect. So I'd love to see all these guys in my B Division Championship racing properly without it being a sort of half-hearted effort by the FIA and Liberty to put on this one rookie race and do it properly, do the Peter Windsor system correctly. Okay, Harshad Zahandri Chowdhury, best wishes for your mum, Mr. Windsor. Thank you very much. That's very kind. Yeah, sadly she's unconscious, so I'm not hoping. I'm not getting too hopeful, but obviously I am hoping and praying for her. And so thank you very much. Kevin Price, sorry to hear that as well. Thank you. Best wishes to you and your mum, Peter. Thank you, Michael Lawless. Send that. Steve Hyman. Hi, Peter. I'm from California. I don't understand why the only American-born driver to win a Drivers' Championship is never talked about. Phil Hill. Can you talk about him? Okay, Mario was born in Trieste, Italy. I don't think Trieste was part of Italy then, was it? I think it was a separate thing. Yeah. Well, Phil was the business. And those of us that love motorsport will never forget Phil or ignore Phil, because he was very, very good test driver, very intelligent, very good racing driver, very good photographer, very good speaker, just an all-round good bloke, and his family too. So yeah, I don't forget him. I can't really say why he's never talked about. I mean, he wasn't very acclaimed in these last few years, because it was the Bernie era, and Bernie's thing was, the past is the past. And I did quite a lot of events with Phil, speaking events, and it was just with Grand Prix tours or whatever. So there we are, Arthur. But yeah, I mean, he's a lovely guy, great driver. Thoughts and prayers from Arthur Sneeden. Look, on that note, I've got something going on now. I do need to get away. I'm really sorry to make this live stream as short as it is, and I appreciate everybody's comments as well. I hope you all understand, and I'll be making up for it and doing something very soon. I can't say exactly when, for obvious reasons, but hope you understand. Thanks for being with me. Thanks for the kind words as well. And I know there are a lot of people still with unanswered questions. My apologies to them, but we will get back to it. Thanks to Jetcraft OEM exclusive and to Track Ninja for their support, and to you, of course, for your care and thoughts as well. Thank you.